everyone. Today we're going to be reviewing some of the basic elements of art that we've been working on. There's 7 elements of art, but we're going to talk about 4 of them today. I'm going to show you some images that are just kind of a reminder. We've been working on these a lot throughout the school year, but this is a project that's just going to kind of combine them all, these 4, and just a little review, okay? So we are going to be looking at some of the basic elements of art. I consider the elements of art like the basic ingredients, the very core, smallest elements, smallest ingredients of how we can make a picture, of how we can put art together to create a picture. Okay, so we are going to look at the first one, which is line. So when you look at book illustrations or covers, or if you look at drawings from video game characters that you may like, think about how they started those pictures, right? They start with a basic line. Almost everything that we do starts with a line. Okay, so line is very important. If you look here at this zigzag line, you may use a zigzag line to show mountains. You may show a zigzag line to show the spikes on the back of a dragon. You may show a wavy line to show the ocean, right, in a picture, showing a wavy line with a boat sitting on it. You may show even a dashed wavy line like this, maybe on a map, right? Maybe you're creating a map and you're going to show a dashed wavy line. Straight lines are used to show, for example, if you're creating a building, you may start by drawing some straight lines. When we first started learning how to draw characters, we would draw stick people, right? Just drawing from straight basic lines. So lines are one of the most basic elements of art. The next thing we're going to look at is shape. So we use shape as well to create pictures. Think about a circle may be the center of a flower, or you may use it for the sun. A square or a rectangle would be used when you're creating buildings, or maybe you're drawing a robot and you're using basic squares and rectangles. Triangles, circles, ovals, hexagons, these are all what are called geometric shapes. And these are shapes that are used often when we're creating all sorts of different types of drawings and art projects. The next one we're going to look at is color. Okay, we often consider color like the fun part, right? We've done our drawing, we've done our work of using lines and shapes, and now we're going to start to add in color. Color can associate different types of emotions. It can define and create certain feelings about different characters that you may be creating. It really gives a lot of emphasis and detail to different types of art projects. Here is a broken down color wheel. Okay, so you see all the colors of the rainbow here. And this is just representing the element of art called color. The next one that we're going to look at is when you put those elements together, what happens when you combine line, shape, and color? Well, when you combine them in a repeating way, you end up with a pattern. So these red circles that are colored in and then repeated over and over and over is creating a polka dot pattern. Here you see different lines. You have thick lines and skinny lines in different colors that are repeated, the same lines over and over, creating a striped pattern. When you look at this image, you can see some of these basic elements and they just look like lines and shapes just laid out on a paper. It doesn't look like anything specific. It's very abstract. We have a circle filled in with a color yellow, and then we have thin lines, short ones, and we have curved lines and a thick line, and we have repeating lines creating a pattern. But when you put all of these lines together, you can create different types of art. So taking those exact same lines and putting them together, now you can see a flower. Okay, what we're going to create today is a combination of lines, shapes, and colors, and we're going to be using what's called a Zentangle. A Zentangle is a repetitive pattern, and you can use different patterns today, but the word Zen means calm or relaxing. Okay, so the whole purpose of creating a Zentangle pattern is that it should be something that's relaxing. You can change the pattern partway through. There's really no making a mistake when creating a Zentangle because you're just going to work it into your design. It's supposed to be a relaxing and calming process. Generally, Zentangles are kept black and white, but you are welcome to add some color today if you would like, okay? The reason they say a tangle is because all of the patterns are sort of tangled together. All right, so what we're gonna create today is we are gonna create a yin yang. Now, normally these are black and white, and you have what's called the opposite. So you may have in a black and white one, the black represents the yang, which is all the energy in this high power, right? And then the white portion would be considered the calm, the yin, the very calming. And when they're mixed together, you have peace, right? You have unity and you have peace. So we're gonna change it today. Instead of doing black and white, we're gonna do a patterned yin yang, where one side is going to just be a solid color, right? So this could be considered, let's say for the white part, we're gonna just paint it a solid color for the yin. And then for the yang, we're gonna do, instead of black, we're gonna do a black and white Zentangle patterning. Now, what's interesting about a yin yang is that you have a circle on each side. So here's another example. You have a circle on each side. The smaller circle ties in whatever this coloring is. So if you had this were to be the white, this circle would be white. If this is black, then this circle would be black. So we are going to put a little bit of pattern here to match with this, and a little bit of color here to match with this. That's showing the yin and the yang coming together to create that piece. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is create our perfect circle. So I'm going to use a bowl. So I have a cereal bowl, and you can pause your video if you need to go and get a bowl. Or if you are in the classroom, you can use one of the tracers available to create a perfect circle. Okay, now I'm going to trace with pencil first, and then I'm going to outline it with my Sharpie. But I want to trace with pencil because if I get some pencil on this bowl, then that will wash off. Okay, so we're going to start by putting our bowl flat on our paper, and we're going to trace around the outside of the bowl. And then I'm going to darken this up, tracing over that with my Sharpie. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create that S shape that divides the yin yang in half. So this is like an S dividing this in half. So it has two curves. I'm going to start over here, not quite in the middle of my circle. I'm going to start over here. And I'm just going to pretend like I'm starting that S. And I'm going to curve around. So even though I'm overlapping this line a little bit right here, I'm going to start, and then I'm going to curve around for my S, and then I'm just going to finish it along there. And now I'm going to go ahead and darken this up. And then for your smaller circle, you're welcome to just draw that by hand, right? If you feel like you can master the smaller circle, you can do that by hand. I'm going to use a small bottle cap. And so I'm going to put one circle here inside of that curve of the S, so inside of this curved portion. And then up here, I'm going to put my second circle. And then I'm going to trace over these with my black Sharpie. Now, we only want to do pattern on one half of our yin yang, not the whole thing, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this up using my Sharpie with some thicker lines. And you can make your pattern as intricate and detailed as you want. You may do more divisions than I am. I'm just going to do a few so that I can keep the video a little bit shorter. Because what we're going to do is we're going to go in and fill this section with patterns, leaving that circle white, okay? I'm going to start just directly doing that with the Sharpie. Just for time's sake, I don't want to take the time to go over every single one of my pencil lines with something darker. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start doing this right away with my Sharpie. And the nice thing about creating a Zentangle is while I'm creating this, if I decide that I made a mistake or this pattern isn't working so well, I can just change that into something else. So if I wanted to now change to a wavy line, I can switch my pattern. This is supposed to be relaxing, just creating different lines and shapes together to create a pattern. And you may decide that you even want to do some with the thicker Sharpie. I'm using a thin Sharpie, and now I've just switched to a thicker Sharpie. So if I wanted to do, let's say, a series of dots, I could use this thicker Sharpie. And you may decide you even want to divide some of your sections a little further. Maybe I'm gonna color in some thicker lines as part of my pattern. So I could even come in here now with some dots and then make another thick line. So like in the examples I showed you, some of the patterns may have some thick lines. And you know what, I think I'm gonna go back here and just add that in and make this whole section match. And so it's okay to go in and color some things in. You may also want to do some of your designs with the thicker Sharpie and some with the thinner one. So here I'm just making a series of spirals. And while my pattern is not perfect, not each one is exactly the same, I'm still doing the repetition of this line type, being the spiral, over and over. And I'm gonna switch back. Actually, I think I'm gonna divide this a little bit further into some more sections so I can get a few more little patterns in here. So you can do even some stripe, just straight lines if you prefer. I'm gonna make some here with some straight lines. You can make what's called a chevron pattern, which is zigzags that are on top of each other. And see here, didn't really work out the way that I was doing that right there. That's okay. I can just somehow work in a new design into my pattern. That's the point about being a Zentangle, is that it's nice and calming and relaxing. So it's okay if that didn't work out exactly as I had planned. And I could do the same thing here. Maybe just color this in a solid. And you are welcome to fast forward through the patterning portion if you are already done with this. If you're already done, you probably are working rather quickly, so you might want to just clean up some of your lines a little bit. But if you are already finished, your yin yang may be smaller than mine. And so if you are already finished, you can fast forward the video until you're ready and move on to the next part where we're going to add some color. But you can make these patterns really intricate and really detailed, right? You don't have to keep them even quite as simple as I'm doing. You saw some of the examples were a lot more detailed than this. Just remember, a pattern is a repetition of line, shape, or color. And so let's see, I have one more section to create. You could do even a crosshatch, which is when you have straight lines that are going in an X pattern. This is a crosshatch, and you may decide, well, you want this to be a tighter crosshatch, so you'd go over this again, making these lines smaller. Okay, now there's one section that doesn't have pattern yet that needs to have a pattern, and that's this dot here, because we're trying to show that this, if this is going to be our yang, that this is part of the yang, right, that's spilled over into this other part of the circle. So you want to add a pattern. Maybe I'll do a curly line. You want to add a pattern into this dot because this is part of the yang. So you're showing how the two blend together, creating that balance. We're looking for balance, okay? Once you're finished with your patterns and you're happy with how that looks, The next thing is going to be to add some color. So you could add some color using crayons. So you would color in this portion. You could do this a rainbow color. You could do your 2 favorite colors, whatever you like. Lots of different choices. You could create another pattern of color. So I could do red and blue and purple, right? And just do stripes of those colors. But you want to make sure whatever you do here, you want to do in this circle as well. Okay, because that's tying those 2 sections together. You could also decide that you want to add some watercolor. So if you wanted to get this kind of look, this was done with watercolor. And to do that, I actually added water to my paper first, getting this really nice and saturated. If you want a less translucent means that you can sort of see through it a little bit. If you want it to be more opaque, which means solid, then you don't have to add the water first, okay? Because that's gonna just make the paint a little bit thinner, okay? But what I did was I added color onto that water, right? And it really helps it spread quite quickly. See how this is spreading really nice and quickly because of all that water. And so I'm gonna fill in, leaving that pattern dot. I'm gonna leave that without the paint. So I'm gonna leave that portion with just the pattern, right? So this is my yin. Call this the yin. It really doesn't matter either way. This could be the yang. We're not doing the black and white. And you wanna make sure that you add some of that color into this dot as well, tying those together, okay? Now, because I have so much water on here, this is a really easy way to then add in if you want to kind of blend in a second color. So I'm gonna just come around the edge, the outside edge, and blend in a little bit of this purple, this violet. Technical name for purple is violet. And so I'm just gonna blend that in around the edges. Now, because I have so much water on my paper, I want you to be aware. Now, I really like this look, and this may not be, you may want to dab some of the water off. I really like this water, streaky kind of watered look. I think that adds a really nice effect. But wherever you see this water kind of pooling on your paper, that is going to leave that kind of watermark texture, okay? So if that's not something that you like, you can see it here on this one as well, right? So that's gonna leave sort of like this sort of texture. So if you really don't like that, you can dab with a paper towel. Just don't even push down. Just put a paper towel there and soak up a little bit of that water, okay? But I really like that sort of look, so I'm gonna leave that. And a lot of that happens because our paper is not a watercolor paper, so it starts to get really bendy and creates those little dips where the water will sit and it dries that way, okay? So if you have a watercolor paper, that doesn't happen quite as much. But so you can see now we have a really fun yin yang, and I hope you enjoyed this project. It was a great way to explore some of those elements of art that we've been working on: line, shape, color, and pattern. And I would love to see your artwork. You're welcome to send it to me. You can email it to me or put it on our school Padlet. And I will see you all soon.